Hey Cakenistas and Cakenistas, hopefully you follow me from the previous video over to this one. In the previous video I showed you all how I made my Raspberry Delight cake, and in this video I'm going to show you guys how I decorated it. I'm going to do a Victorian style buttercream design, like an old-fashioned style of cake decorating. We're going to use several different piping tips, use several different piping methods. It's gonna be beautiful. I love this cake. A lot to see visually, at the same time kind of simplistic. So if you haven't done so yet, please make sure that you have subscribed to the channel, press on the notification bell, like the video, and let's get started. I am so weird. Ugh. As seen in the previous video, my cake is just about ready to go. I have layered it with raspberry and cheesecake filling, and I've crumb coated the cake, and now I'm adding that last and final layer of frosting. The consistency of this buttercream made it super awkward to work with, but we got it done. So the very first tip that I'm going to be using is an interesting one. I've never used this tip before. This is tip number 340 by the brand Chef Fast. I did a collaboration with Chef Fast a few years ago for Valentine's Day, and I still have piping tips that I have never used. So I'm going to pipe the border with that piping tip, and then I'm going to move on to a traditional leaf piping tip, tip number 68 by Bakery Crafts. And I'm going to pipe out a garland style border, making ruffles using this piping tip, which is the same process as a shell border would be. You can definitely make sure that your spacing is accurate by measuring out your spaces and then marking them with a toothpick. I wanted to freehand it, of course, you know. I wanted to see if I got skills. As fondant has gotten more popular in cake decorating, buttercream designs are kind of fleeting. So if you noticed, I've been giving you all a lot more buttercream designs that you can do at home. I don't want us to forget the art of buttercream. Some things you just can't do with fondant, some things you just can't do with frosting. Okay, we know that. We know that. I'm going to go almost halfway down the cake and pipe the exact same border. This was so difficult because I had little bits of shortening in my piping bag and they were clogging up my piping tip. It was getting ridiculous. I had to keep on starting and stopping. So if it looks a little bit wonky, which it definitely does, that's why. We're going to pipe one more border with this piping tip, and then we're going to move on to the next one. There's a billion different ways that you could pipe your borders onto this cake, but this one is a very, I want to say, beginner friendly cake. It may not look beginner friendly, and that's what's so amazing about it, but anybody could do this. If you can pipe a border on a cake, you can make this cake. If you've been following me for a few years now, what cake does this remind you of? There is one cake on this channel that is kind of similar in technique. That is the sweater cake. And that is still one of my favorite cakes on this channel to this day. So the next piping tip that we're going to be using is tip number 5 by Wilton. I am going to line the ribbons that I just made. I'm going to go right above them and pipe little dots. I have to be honest with you guys. I am not good at piping dots. It makes no sense because my dots look like little prickly mounds. The consistency of the frosting really matters. When my consistency is softer, it doesn't pipe a prickly prickle like this. However, at least my pricklies are somewhat consistent. So I'm going to appreciate the artistry for what it is and move on. The next piping tip is tip number 22 by Deco Pack. I did not know that I had so many brands of piping tips. I'm going to go right in the center of the cake and pipe a traditional shell border, one of the first borders that you learn how to pipe. I'm not going to connect them, however, because I do want to put some pearls there. And before moving on, I am going to pop that round tip back on, and it's so important to use a coupler on your piping bag so that you can switch your tips back and forth without doing anything extra. I need to make a pollen cake. I didn't have allergies till I moved here with all the trees. I never had this issue. You ever? I'm sorry. I'm not making fun of people. Somebody in my life used to do that. They would pull and be like, I used to feel so bad for them. There is so much medication on the market. I'll pop a Zyrtec before I'm doing all that. Okay, I'm done. All right. I'm going to decorate my decorations now. Don't mind me. You guys already know what's going on over here, okay, on this channel. I'm going to add what are called spaghetti sprinkles. Yes, they are made with spaghetti. Little pieces of spaghetti covered in royal icing, I believe, and then coated gold. I'm adding those to the ends of my ribbons, and I don't know where the footage is of me actually piping those ribbons. I used a regular petal tip. I don't even really like that ribbon border. That is the one border that I could do without. I could have done more of the shell border, but it's also fun to have different styles, so we're just going to appreciate it for what it is. I had to use a small jewelry tool to apply each individual little pearl. This made it so much easier, so if you don't have a tool like this, sometimes a toothpick dipped in a little bit of something sticky like honey or corn syrup works. The frosting that I'm using to decorate the cake, it has a larger amount of confectioner sugar than I would typically add. So now that I'm at the end of my decorating, I did a little bit of butter and a little bit more shortening until it just was super fluffy and creamy and even just one shade lighter in color. So before we pipe that top border, I want to add a little bit of shimmer. I'm going to use the Roxy & Roxy brand to pump on this little violet dust. So lastly, I'm going to use one of my larger piping tips, one of my favorite ones. Tip number 867 by Ateco, literally the 5th brand that I have mentioned in this video. That is insane. I'm going to pipe tall swirls onto the top of the cake, and honestly I didn't know how much buttercream I was going to have left over, so I started off with just a 2-time around swirl, and then I took it up to a 4-time around swirl because this is definitely a dramatic cake. You might as well keep it dramatic through and through. We have kept the same color throughout the entire cake, and while I want to stick to the color on top, I want something that is a little bit richer to really make the cake pop. So I'm going to use freeze-dried raspberries. It breaks apart so easily, and once it does, it looks like the most glamorous pigment that I think I've ever seen. I feel like a whole new world, 100,000 things to see, but now from way up here it's crystal clear that now I'm in a whole new world with you. It's the same feeling that I felt when I got the gold leaf. I am in complete awe. Now I am trying to decide what kind of raspberry to put on the top of my cake. I can do a fresh raspberry, I can do a gold dusted raspberry, or I can do one of those freeze-dried raspberries. I asked my mom her opinion, and I was like, do you not like the dried raspberries? She said, they look old. And I was like, oh, they do look old. Like if you sit them on top of the cake whole, they do have like an old look. Like people won't see that right off the bat and think, oh, dried raspberries, because who's thinking dried raspberries, you know? Fresh raspberries was definitely the way to go with this cake. So to finish off this super glamorous Victorian style cake, I'm going to top each of the mounds with fresh raspberries. And I'm going to chuckle, because why not? Look at the masterpiece that we have created. There is something about the little hairs on those raspberries. I love it, and I'm creeped out at the same time. Tell me what you guys think of this cake below, and if you would try it out for yourself. I hope that you all enjoyed this one. Couture and a Victorian cake. Bye guys. This was such a tall cake. It was great. I love a tall cake. It tastes like every happy dance that ever existed. It was delightfully raspberry. It was raspberry delight. So that is how we made our Victorian style cake. Let's Pick a Cake needs to comment. The cake Nista comment of the day is going to go to Deborah on my How I Ship Cakes Across the Country video. She said, love your show and puppy. Thank you so much for making me feel special. I guess this technically is like my show. And my puppy loves you too. Biscotti loves everybody. I need a trainer at this point because he sees a stranger and he wants to give them a hug and he is too big. If I had known how many of you were interested in seeing that process, I would have filmed it a while ago. These are the easiest videos for me to do, honestly, because I would be doing it anyway. I'm just filming the process. So if you're interested in more videos like that, then just let me know. What's cool about my channel and all of you is that many of you are not just baking for fun, but you're baking for business, or you would like to. Many of y'all are very, very, very talented in this cake decorating world. I'm like, okay, these cake Nistas are actually cake Nistas. Like, they're not just here for a fun time. They have a business, or they're about to have a business. It's kind of real up in here, and I have to stay on point for y'all. I will see you guys in the next video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Once again, like the video, comment down below so we could chat. Thank y'all so much. Bye, cake Nistas.